Howdy, friends. I hope y'all are well. Tonight, we're going to explore something that might seem contradictory at first. We're going to talk about how technology, despite all its promises of efficiency and productivity, has actually made us less productive than we were 20 years ago. Take a moment to settle in. Let your shoulders relax. Let your breathing slow. This isn't about technology being evil or about romanticizing the past. This is about understanding how tools that were supposed to save us time have actually consumed it. How devices meant to help us focus have fragmented our attention, and how systems designed to make us more efficient have made us more distracted. Think about it for a moment. 20 years ago, in the early 2000s, we had computers and the internet, but smartphones weren't ubiquitous yet. Social media was in its infancy. You couldn't check your email every 5 minutes because you weren't carrying email in your pocket. You couldn't get notifications from dozens of apps throughout the day because those apps didn't exist yet. And yet, somehow, work got done. Books got written. Businesses operated. People accomplished things. In fact, many people accomplish more in a day than we do now, despite having what we'd consider primitive technology by today's standards. Tonight, we're going to explore this paradox. We'll look at how the very tools meant to make us productive have become the greatest obstacles to productivity. We'll understand the mechanisms by which technology fragments our attention, creates false urgency, and fills our days with activity that feels productive but often isn't. So, settle in, get comfortable, let your mind relax, and let's begin this journey into understanding how technology has made us less productive than we were 20 years ago. Now, let's start by understanding what productivity actually means and how it's changed. Productivity, at its core, is about accomplishing meaningful work. It's about moving toward goals, creating value, solving problems, making progress on things that matter. It's not about being busy. It's not about responding to messages quickly. It's about doing work that actually makes a difference. 20 years ago, productivity was more straightforward. You had a task or project. You sat down to work on it. You worked for a sustained period. You made progress. You moved on to the next task. There were fewer interruptions, fewer distractions, fewer competing demands for your attention. Today, productivity has become confused with responsiveness. We think we're being productive when we answer emails quickly, when we're active on Slack, when we're responsive to messages. But responsiveness is not productivity. It's often the opposite. Every time you stop to respond to something, you're interrupting whatever you were actually working on. Deep work, the ability to focus without distraction on cognitively demanding tasks, was easier 20 years ago. You could close your office door, or put on headphones, or just be in a space where interruptions were minimal. And you could work for hours without anything breaking your concentration. Now, deep work is nearly impossible for most people. Even if you turn off notifications, even if you close your email, the pull of your devices is constant. The possibility of something new, something urgent, something interesting, it's always there, calling to you, fragmenting your focus even when you're trying to resist. The paradox is that we have more productivity tools than ever. Apps for task management, time tracking, note-taking, project management, communication, collaboration. The list is endless. We're drowning in tools meant to make us productive. And yet, we're less productive than when we had fewer tools. This is because the tools themselves become work. You spend time organizing tasks in your productivity app. You spend time coordinating in project management software. you spend time in meetings about how to use the collaboration tools. The tools that were supposed to save time end up consuming time. Context switching is the killer of modern productivity. 20 years ago, you might work on one or two things in a day. You'd spend the morning on one project, the afternoon on another. Each got sustained, focused attention. Now, you might touch dozens of different things in a day: email, messaging, a few minutes on this project, a quick call about that one, back to email, a notification from Slack, and so on. Every time you switch contexts, there's a cognitive cost. Your brain needs time to fully engage with a new task. If you're switching every few minutes, you never fully engage with anything. You're constantly in a state of partial attention, giving everything a little bit of focus, but nothing your full focus. This makes everything take longer and produce worse results. A task that would take 1 hour of focused work might take 3 hours when fragmented across the day with constant interruptions. And the quality suffers too. Shallow work produces shallow results. Now, let's explore how smartphones and constant connectivity have fundamentally changed our relationship with work and attention. The smartphone is probably the single most significant productivity killer of the modern era. It's a computer in your pocket, always with you, always on, always ready to distract you. 20 years ago, if you left your office, you left work behind. Your computer was at your desk. Your work stayed there. Now, work is always accessible. You can check email from anywhere, at any time. You can respond to messages while waiting in line, while walking, while lying in bed. This sounds like efficiency, like you're using small pockets of time productively. But it's actually preventing you from ever fully disengaging, from ever truly resting. This constant accessibility creates an expectation of constant availability. If you can respond to emails from anywhere, then why didn't you respond to this one immediately? The technology that was supposed to give you flexibility has instead created an expectation of always-on availability. This destroys boundaries between work and personal life. 20 years ago, you worked during work hours and you were off during non-work hours. Now, work bleeds into every moment. You check email before getting out of bed. You respond to messages during dinner. You think about work problems late into the night because your work device is right there on your nightstand. The inability to fully disconnect means you never fully recharge. Rest is essential for productivity. Your brain needs downtime to consolidate learning, to process information, to restore energy for focused work. But if you're always partially engaged with work, you never get that full rest, which means you're perpetually operating at reduced capacity. Notifications are engineered to capture your attention. Every ping, every buzz, every banner that slides down from the top of your screen, these are designed by teams of engineers and psychologists to be impossible to ignore. They trigger curiosity and anxiety. What is it? Who's messaging? Is it important? You can't not look. But every notification is an interruption. Even if you just glance at your phone to dismiss a notification, you've broken your concentration. And research shows that after an interruption, it takes an average of 23 minutes to fully return to a task at the same level of focus you had before. 23 minutes. And most people are interrupted far more frequently than once every 23 minutes. The sheer number of apps and services you're connected to multiplies the interruption problem. It's not just email and phone calls anymore. It's Slack, Teams, WhatsApp, text messages, social media, news alerts, app updates, and dozens of other potential sources of notifications. Each one a little pull on your attention, each one a distraction from whatever you're trying to accomplish. Even when notifications are turned off, the presence of the smartphone is a distraction. Studies have shown that just having your phone visible, even if it's silent and face down, reduces your cognitive capacity. Part of your brain is occupied with not checking the phone, which means less capacity is available for the task you're trying to focus on. The addictive design of apps makes resistance difficult. Apps are designed to be habit-forming. Infinite scroll, autoplay, variable reward schedules, these are techniques borrowed from gambling designed to keep you engaged. You don't choose to spend an hour scrolling. The app is designed to make you keep scrolling, and your willpower is no match for sophisticated behavioral engineering. Social media, in particular, is a massive productivity drain. 20 years ago, social media barely existed. MySpace and Friendster were around but weren't ubiquitous. Facebook was just launching in colleges. Twitter didn't exist. Instagram, Snapchat, TikTok, none of it existed. Now, billions of hours are consumed by social media every day. People check these platforms dozens or hundreds of times daily. They scroll through feeds during moments that could be restful or productive. The time adds up to hours per day for many people. That's hours that 20 years ago would have been available for reading, thinking, creating, or actually resting. The content on social media is designed to be engaging but not fulfilling. It gives you a little hit of dopamine with each scroll, each like, each new post. But it never satisfies. You can scroll for an hour and feel like you've accomplished nothing, because you haven't. You've consumed content that was engineered to be addictive, but not meaningful. Now, let's talk about email, and how it's evolved from a productivity tool to a productivity trap. Email was supposed to make communication more efficient than phone calls and physical mail, and in some ways it did. But it's also created an expectation of immediate response that's damaged productivity far more than it's helped. 20 years ago, email existed, but the culture around it was different. You might check email a few times a day. You'd respond when you had time. There wasn't an expectation of instant response. An email was like a letter, something you'd get to when you got to it. Now, email has become synchronous communication masquerading as asynchronous. Technically, email is asynchronous. You send when convenient, and the other person responds when convenient. But culturally, it's treated as synchronous. If you don't respond within hours, sometimes within minutes, you're seen as unresponsive or unprofessional. This forces you to constantly monitor email, which means constant interruption. If you're checking email every 15 minutes, you're interrupting yourself every 15 minutes. You never get sustained time to focus on anything else. Your day becomes about processing email rather than doing your actual work. The volume of email has exploded. 20 years ago, you might get a dozen emails a day. Now, many people get hundreds. Much of it is unnecessary. CCs and reply alls mean you're included in threads you don't need to be part of. Marketing emails flood your inbox. Notifications from various services add to the noise. Dealing with this volume becomes a job in itself. You spend hours processing email, reading, sorting, responding, filing, deleting. This feels like work, and technically it is work, but it's not productive work. It's not moving projects forward or creating value. It's just maintenance of the communication system. Email creates false urgency. Someone sends an email and expects a quick response, even though the issue isn't actually urgent. But you don't know what's urgent and what's not without reading it. So you have to stay on top of your inbox. This means constant vigilance, constant interruption, constant anxiety about what might be waiting for you. The psychology of the inbox is stressful. Unread emails feel like undone tasks. Inbox zero becomes a goal that's never quite achieved. You work to clear your inbox only to have it fill up again immediately. It's a Sisyphean task that creates stress without creating value. Email also encourages shallow thinking and hasty responses. When you're trying to quickly process a high volume of email, you don't think deeply about any of it. You fire off quick responses without full consideration. This leads to miscommunication, to decisions made without proper thought, to problems that could have been avoided with more reflection. The accessibility of email on phones means you're never away from it. You check email while waiting for coffee, while in the bathroom, while supposed to be relaxing. This constant engagement with email means you're always partially in work mode, always thinking about professional obligations, never fully present in the moment. Meetings have become another way that email and digital communication tools have reduced productivity. Paradoxically, the tools that were supposed to reduce the need for meetings have increased them. Now, it's easy to schedule meetings. Everyone has digital calendars, and video conferencing makes it possible to meet without anyone leaving their desk. So, meetings proliferate, and meetings are often where productivity goes to die. Hours spent in meetings are hours not spent doing actual work, and often meetings themselves are unfocused, too long, and include people who don't need to be there. Now, let's explore how multitasking, enabled by technology, has made us less effective. Multitasking is a myth. Your brain can't actually focus on multiple things simultaneously. What you're really doing is rapid task switching, shifting your attention back and forth between tasks. And each switch has a cost. 20 years ago, multitasking was less common because you had fewer things competing for your attention. You might be working on a document, and that was it. No other windows open, no notifications popping up, no phone buzzing. You could single task because the environment allowed it. Now, multitasking is almost unavoidable. You're working on a document, but also monitoring email, keeping Slack open in case someone messages you, maybe listening to a podcast or music, glancing at your phone when it lights up. You're never fully engaged with any single task. This divided attention means everything takes longer and produces worse results. A document that could be written in 2 hours of focused work takes 4 hours when you're constantly distracted. And the quality suffers because you're never thinking deeply about the content, never achieving the flow state where your best work happens. Research consistently shows that multitasking reduces productivity and increases errors. Tasks take longer to complete. More mistakes are made. Comprehension and retention decrease. Creativity suffers because the brain doesn't have space to make connections and generate new ideas. Yet, despite this evidence, multitasking is worn as a badge of honor in modern work culture. People brag about juggling multiple projects, about being able to switch contexts quickly, about managing dozens of things at once. But this isn't actually effective. It's a sign of a fragmented, chaotic work environment where focus is impossible. The technology environment encourages multitasking through design. Multiple windows and tabs make it easy to have many things open at once. Notifications pull you from one app to another. Split-screen features let you see multiple things simultaneously. The design itself suggests that you should be doing multiple things at once, but optimal human performance requires single tasking. Focus on one thing, work on it until completion or until a natural break point, then move to the next thing. This sequential attention produces better work faster than divided attention across multiple things. The inability to single task is a learned behavior, not an innate limitation. We've been trained by our technology environment to have fragmented attention, but attention can be retrained. The challenge is that the environment works against you, constantly pulling your attention in multiple directions. Now, let's talk about how social media and the comparison trap have reduced our actual productivity. Social media platforms are designed to keep you engaged, scrolling, interacting. They use sophisticated algorithms to show you content that keeps you on the platform. And they've succeeded. The average person spends multiple hours per day on social media. This is time that could be spent on productive work, on creative projects, on learning, on rest. But instead, it's spent scrolling through feeds, watching videos, reading posts. And unlike reading a book or watching a movie, which have defined endpoints, social media is endless. There's always more content, always another video, always something new to see. The comparison trap is particularly destructive to productivity. When you see others' highlight reels on social media, their successes, their achievements, their seemingly perfect lives, it can create feelings of inadequacy. You feel like you're not doing enough, not achieving enough, not living up to some standard. This actually reduces motivation and productivity. When the gap between where you are and where you think you should be seems impossibly large, it's demotivating. You might procrastinate or avoid work because you feel overwhelmed by how far you have to go. Social media also creates a culture of performative productivity. People post about their achievements, their work, their progress. This creates pressure to be productive, not for its own sake, but to have something to post about. You're working for the appearance of productivity rather than actual productivity. This can lead to choosing projects based on how they'll look on social media rather than whether they're meaningful or important. You might work on something that makes a good post rather than something that's actually valuable. The metric becomes likes and engagement rather than actual impact or achievement. FOMO, fear of missing out, is another productivity killer enabled by social media. You see events, opportunities, experiences that others are having, and you feel like you're missing out. This creates anxiety and distraction. You're worried about what you're not doing rather than focusing on what you are doing. This scatters your attention across possibilities rather than concentrating it on actualities. You might start multiple projects because you're afraid of missing opportunities, but then you can't finish any of them because you're spread too thin. Or you're constantly switching projects based on what seems exciting in the moment, rather than working steadily toward long-term goals. The dopamine hits from social media engagement are addictive, but not fulfilling. Each like, comment, share gives a small burst of dopamine. Your brain starts craving these hits. You check social media compulsively, seeking that little reward. But unlike the satisfaction of completing meaningful work, these hits don't accumulate into anything lasting. You're getting the feeling of productivity without the actual results. This can actually reduce your drive for real productivity. If you're getting dopamine hits from social media, Your brain's reward system is partially satisfied. The drive to do difficult work that produces real accomplishment is diminished because you're already getting rewards from easier sources. Now, let's explore how information overload has paralyzed decision-making and action. 20 years ago, information was more scarce. If you wanted to learn something, you went to the library or bought a book. If you wanted news, you read the newspaper or watched the nightly news. Information was filtered and curated. You got less of it, but what you got had been selected as important or valuable. Now, information is infinite and unfiltered. You have access to more information than you could consume in 1,000 lifetimes. Every topic has hundreds of sources, perspectives, analyses. News is constant. Content is endless. This sounds like a resource, but it's actually become a burden. Information overload leads to analysis paralysis. When you have too many options, too many perspectives, too much information, decision-making becomes difficult. You keep researching, keep reading, keep seeking more information because you feel like you can't make a good decision without it. This prevents action. You spend time consuming information rather than actually doing anything with it. You read about productivity techniques instead of being productive. You watch videos about starting a business instead of starting one. You research fitness plans instead of exercising. Consumption replaces action. The paradox is that more information doesn't lead to better decisions. Beyond a certain point, additional information doesn't improve decision quality and can actually make it worse. You become overwhelmed, confused by contradictory information, unable to filter signal from noise. 20 years ago, with less information, you made decisions with what you had and moved forward. Now, there's always more information you could gather, always another perspective you could consider. This keeps you stuck in the research phase, never confident enough to act. The constant stream of news and updates creates a sense that you need to stay informed about everything. But this is impossible and unnecessary. Most news isn't relevant to your life or work. Staying constantly updated on current events consumes time and mental energy without providing value. This creates anxiety and distraction. You're worried about what's happening in the world, about crises and controversies, about things you have no control over. This anxiety takes up mental space that could be used for productive work or creative thinking. Clickbait and sensationalist content exploits your psychology. Headlines are designed to provoke curiosity, outrage, or fear. You click to satisfy that trigger, which rewards the behavior, which makes you more likely to click next time. You end up consuming low-quality information that doesn't benefit you, but takes your time and attention. The algorithmic curation of information creates filter bubbles. You see content similar to what you've engaged with before. This makes you feel like certain perspectives or topics are more prevalent than they are, which can distort your understanding of reality and influence your priorities and decisions. Content creation itself has become a distraction from productivity. Many people feel pressure to create and share content constantly, whether that's social media posts, blog articles, videos, or podcasts. This content creation is treated as productivity, but for most people, it's not productive toward their actual goals. You spend time creating content about your work rather than doing your work. You write posts about your projects rather than working on the projects. You film yourself being productive rather than being productive. The performance of work replaces actual work. Now, let's talk about how collaboration tools have made collaboration harder. The proliferation of collaboration tools like Slack, Teams, Zoom, Google Docs, and countless project management platforms were supposed to make collaboration easier and more efficient. And in some ways, they have enabled new forms of remote work and async collaboration. But they've also created new problems. Now, instead of having one or two ways to communicate with colleagues, you have a dozen: email, Slack, Teams, text messaging, various project management tools, video calls, the list goes on. Each platform is another thing to monitor, another potential source of messages and interruptions. This fragmentation of communication is itself inefficient. You might miss important information because it was shared in the wrong channel. You waste time checking multiple platforms to see if anyone has messaged you. Conversations get split across platforms, making it hard to find information later. Slack, in particular, while useful for quick communication, has become a major productivity killer. The expectation in many workplaces is that you're available on Slack during work hours, responding quickly to messages. This means constant interruption. Every Slack message is an interruption from whatever you are working on. The design of Slack encourages constant checking. Channels have unread counts. Messages trigger notifications. The interface is optimized for engagement. You feel compelled to stay on top of Slack, to clear those unread messages, to be responsive. This responsiveness comes at the cost of focused work. Slack also creates a culture of synchronous communication. People expect immediate responses to messages. But this defeats the purpose of digital communication, which should be asynchronous. If you need immediate responses, a quick meeting might actually be more efficient than a long Slack thread, where people are partially present while trying to do other work. Video calls have their own productivity problems. Zoom fatigue is real. Being on video calls for hours exhausts people more than in-person meetings, because you're constantly aware of being watched, you're staring at screens, and subtle communication cues that happen naturally in person require more effort to perceive and transmit on video. The ease of scheduling video calls has led to more meetings. Since people don't have to commute to a meeting room, meetings proliferate. Your calendar fills with back-to-back video calls, leaving no time for actual work. You spend all day in meetings about work rather than doing work. Async collaboration through tools like Google Docs can be efficient, but it also creates new problems. Version confusion when multiple people are editing, endless comment threads that become their own communication nightmare. Difficulty knowing when something is final versus still in progress. Project management tools like Asana, Trello, and Jira were supposed to bring clarity to projects, but they also create overhead. Tasks must be entered, updated, commented on, moved through workflows. The management of the tool becomes work in itself, separate from the actual project work. And when everyone is working in different tools with different preferences, integration becomes impossible. Information lives in silos. You can't get a clear picture of everything without checking 6 different platforms. The tools meant to bring clarity instead fragment information and create confusion. Now, let's explore how entertainment and content consumption has expanded to fill all available time. 20 years ago, entertainment was more limited and required more intentionality. If you wanted to watch TV, you had to be home when the show aired, or you had to record it. If you wanted to watch a movie, you had to rent or buy it. If you wanted music, you had to own CDs or download files. These limitations meant entertainment fit into specific times and spaces. You watched your show in the evening. You listened to music while commuting or doing chores. Entertainment had boundaries. Now, entertainment is unlimited and accessible everywhere. Streaming services provide endless content. Music streaming has every song ever recorded. Podcasts number in the millions. YouTube has hundreds of hours of video uploaded every minute. And all of it is accessible on your phone, anywhere, anytime. This abundance has removed the natural limits that used to constrain entertainment consumption. You can binge watch an entire series in a weekend. You can listen to podcasts all day. You can scroll through videos for hours. There's no natural endpoint, no moment where you've consumed all available content and must do something else. This creates a trap where entertainment expands to fill all available time. Any moment of downtime becomes an opportunity to consume content. Waiting in line, you watch TikTok. Commuting, you stream a show. Before bed, you scroll through videos. Moments that could be restful or thoughtful become filled with passive consumption. Autoplay features are specifically designed to keep you consuming. One episode ends and the next starts automatically. One video ends and another begins. You have to make an active choice to stop rather than an active choice to continue. This design exploits human inertia, keeping you engaged longer than you intended. Algorithms optimize for engagement, not for your benefit. They learn what keeps you watching and show you more of that. This creates feedback loops where you're shown increasingly specific content that matches your viewing patterns. You enter rabbit holes of content consumption that can last hours. The illusion is that you're making choices about what to watch, but really, you're responding to algorithmic suggestions optimized to keep you on the platform. You're not in control as much as you think you are. Binge-watching culture has normalized consuming entertainment for many hours at a time. 20 years ago, you might watch a show for an hour. Now, watching for 4 or 6 hours is common. Entire weekends are consumed by binge-watching. This time represents opportunities for productivity, creativity, rest, or relationships that are instead spent in passive consumption. The content itself is designed to be addictive. Cliffhangers at the end of episodes, ongoing storylines that require watching the next episode, series designed to be binged rather than watched weekly. You're not just enjoying a show. You're being psychologically manipulated to keep watching. Podcasts and audiobooks have colonized previously productive time. 20 years ago, time spent commuting, exercising, or doing chores was often thinking time. Your mind could wander, process thoughts, be creative. Now, that time is filled with podcast content. This isn't necessarily bad. Podcasts and audiobooks can be educational and valuable, but they also prevent the mind from having unstructured time. You're always consuming input rather than processing and generating your own thoughts. The constant input can actually reduce creativity and insight. Mobile games are another massive time sink. Games are specifically designed to be addictive, using psychological techniques to keep you playing. What seems like a quick 5-minute break becomes an hour of playing. The games are often designed to be played in short bursts, but frequently throughout the day, creating constant interruption. The monetization models of mobile games encourage frequent engagement. Daily rewards, time-limited events, energy systems that refill over time, all of these push you to check in multiple times per day. The game becomes a background presence in your life, constantly pulling your attention. Now, let's talk about how the promise of remote work and flexibility has actually extended work hours. Remote work, enabled by technology, was supposed to provide flexibility and save commute time. And for some people, it has improved work-life balance. But for many, it's had the opposite effect, extending work hours and erasing boundaries between work and personal life. When your work is always accessible from home, it's harder to stop working. There's no commute that creates a transition between work and home. You can always do just a little more work, and that little more adds up to significantly extended hours. The expectation of availability increases with remote work. If you're working from home, why can't you respond to that message in the evening? Why can't you join that late call? The flexibility cuts both ways. It allows you to work from anywhere, but it also means you're expected to work from everywhere at any time. Many remote workers report working longer hours than they did when commuting to an office. The boundaries that the office provided, leaving at a certain time, not having access to work systems from home, these are gone. Work expands to fill not just the workday, but evenings and weekends too. The loss of separation between work and personal space is also problematic. Your home becomes your office. The space that was for rest and personal life now has work associations. You can't fully relax in a space where you also work. This reduces the quality of your non-work time. Some people have created dedicated workspaces in their homes to address this, but not everyone has that option. And even with a dedicated space, the work is still in your home, always there, always accessible, always calling to you. The always-on culture has been amplified by remote work. You're online, you can see who else is online, and there's social pressure to be available. If others are working in the evening, you feel like you should be too. The competitive dynamic of who's most dedicated or responsive intensifies. Meetings have become longer and more frequent with remote work. The ease of joining a video call from anywhere means meetings get scheduled more casually. And without the natural constraints of conference room availability and people's need to move between physical locations, meetings stretch longer. The informal conversations that used to happen naturally in offices, which often resolved questions quickly, now require scheduled meetings. What could have been a 30-second chat in the hallway becomes a 30-minute video call. The overhead of communication increases. Remote work was supposed to save the commute time, giving people 2 or more hours back per day. But for many people, that time has simply been absorbed by extended work hours. They're starting earlier and finishing later because the boundaries are gone. The technology that enables remote work, video conferencing, cloud-based tools, constant connectivity, these same technologies make it impossible to truly disconnect. You're never fully off work because work is always right there, accessible with a click. Now, let's explore how the gamification of productivity has turned meaningful work into meaningless metrics. The quantified self-movement and productivity apps have gamified work and life. You track steps, calories, screen time, tasks completed, habits maintained. You're turning life into a game with points and achievements. This can be motivating in the short term. Seeing progress, hitting targets, maintaining streaks, these provide little dopamine hits that feel good. But they also shift focus from the intrinsic value of activities to the extrinsic rewards of metrics. You might exercise not because it feels good or improves your health, but to hit your step count. You might complete tasks to check them off rather than because they're important. The metric becomes the goal, displacing the actual purpose of the activity. Goodhart's law states that when a measure becomes a target, it ceases to be a good measure. This applies perfectly to productivity gamification. When you're optimizing for tasks completed, you start choosing easier tasks to boost your numbers rather than important tasks that might take longer. This creates a treadmill of meaningless achievement. You're hitting your targets, maintaining your streaks, earning your badges, but you're not necessarily accomplishing anything meaningful. The metrics give the feeling of productivity without actual productivity. The social comparison element of many productivity apps makes this worse. Leaderboards, shared achievements, social features that let you see how you compare to others. Now, you're not just competing with yourself, you're competing with others. This shifts motivation further from intrinsic to extrinsic. You might work not because the work is valuable, but to maintain your position on a leaderboard. You might brag about your productivity metrics on social media, turning work into performance. The work itself becomes secondary to the appearance and metrics of work. Streak anxiety is a real problem with habit tracking apps. You've maintained a streak for 100 days. Now you feel compelled to maintain it, even when it doesn't serve you. You exercise when you're sick to maintain your streak. You complete tasks when they're not important to keep your completed count up. The streak becomes more important than the underlying behavior. You've turned the tool into a master that controls you rather than a servant that supports you. This is the opposite of productivity. Time tracking apps create similar problems. When you're tracking every minute of your day, you become anxious about unproductive time. Moments of rest or thought feel wasteful. You're constantly optimizing for logged productive time rather than for actual output or creativity. This can actually reduce productivity. Creativity and problem solving often happen during downtime when your mind wanders. But if you're trying to maximize tracked productive time, you eliminate that essential downtime, and your actual work quality suffers. The quantification of everything also creates measurement overhead. You spend time logging tasks, updating trackers, reviewing metrics, adjusting systems. This meta work takes time away from actual work. You're being productive about being productive, which is a form of productive procrastination. Productivity porn is content about being productive rather than actual productivity. You watch videos about morning routines, read articles about productivity techniques, listen to podcasts about time management. This feels like you're working on being productive, but you're actually just consuming content about productivity. This is a trap many people fall into. They spend hours learning about productivity systems and never actually implementing them or doing the work those systems are supposed to support. The learning becomes a substitute for doing. Now, let's talk about how notification culture has trained us to seek constant stimulation. 20 years ago, you had very few sources of notifications. Your phone might ring. You might get an email if you checked it. That was about it. Long periods of your day passed without anything demanding your immediate attention. Now, notifications are constant. Dozens of apps want to notify you about something. Messages, emails, news, app updates, social media activity, game events, delivery updates. The list is endless. Your phone buzzes, pings, lights up constantly throughout the day. This constant stimulation has trained your brain to expect and seek it. When you go a while without a notification, you feel uneasy. You check your phone even when it hasn't alerted you because you're anticipating something. You've become conditioned to expect constant input. This is a form of addiction. Your brain's reward system has been hijacked by unpredictable notifications. You don't know when the next one will come or what it will be. which creates a variable reward schedule that's highly addictive. This is the same mechanism that makes gambling addictive. The result is an inability to tolerate boredom or stillness. When you have a moment with nothing specific to do, instead of letting your mind rest or wander, you immediately reach for your phone. You're filling every gap with stimulation, with input, with something new. But boredom and stillness are actually valuable. They're when your brain processes information, makes connections, generates creative ideas. They're when you have original thoughts rather than just consuming others' thoughts. By eliminating all boredom, you're eliminating opportunities for creativity and insight. The constant context switching that notifications create also fragments your thinking. You're never thinking about any one thing for an extended period. Your thoughts are constantly interrupted by new inputs. This makes deep thinking impossible and reduces your cognitive capacity over time. Studies have shown that the mere presence of a smartphone, even when silent and face down, reduces cognitive performance. Part of your brain is occupied with the effort of not checking it, which means less cognitive capacity is available for other tasks. The phone doesn't even need to do anything. Just being there makes you less effective. This notification culture has also created an expectation of immediate response. When someone messages you, they expect a quick reply. If you don't respond within hours, sometimes within minutes, they might send a follow-up. "Did you get my message?" This creates pressure to be constantly monitoring notifications and responding quickly. But this responsiveness comes at a massive cost to productivity. Every time you respond to a message, you're interrupting whatever you were working on. The interruption takes you out of flow, out of deep focus, and it takes significant time to get back to that state, if you can at all. The anxiety of missed notifications is real. If you turn off notifications to focus, you worry about what you might be missing. Is someone trying to reach you urgently? Did something important happen? This anxiety itself is distracting, even when notifications are off. The solution isn't just turning off notifications. It's retraining your brain to not expect constant stimulation, to be comfortable with periods of quiet, to trust that anything truly urgent will reach you in time. But this is difficult when the entire technology environment is designed to create the opposite behavior. Now, let's explore how the abundance of choices has led to decision fatigue and paralysis. 20 years ago, you had fewer choices in almost every domain of life. Fewer streaming options, fewer apps, fewer ways to accomplish any given task. This limitation was actually liberating because it reduced decision fatigue. Decision fatigue is real. Every decision you make throughout the day depletes your mental energy. By the end of the day, you have less capacity for good decision making. This is why people often make poor choices in the evening. They're mentally exhausted from a day of decisions. The explosion of options in the digital age means you're making far more decisions than people did 20 years ago. Which app to use for note-taking? Which productivity system to implement? Which streaming service has the show you want? Which of the 100 restaurants on the delivery app to order from? Each of these small decisions takes mental energy. Individually, they're trivial. Collectively, they're exhausting. You're spending cognitive resources on decisions that don't matter much, leaving less energy for decisions that do matter. The paradox of choice is that more options often leads to worse decisions and less satisfaction. When you have too many options, you're overwhelmed. You spend more time choosing and less time enjoying your choice. And whatever you choose, you wonder if a different option would have been better. This applies to productivity tools especially. There are hundreds of task management apps, note-taking apps, calendar apps, time-tracking apps. The time you spend researching and choosing between them is time not spent actually being productive. And once you choose, you're never certain you made the right choice. You see articles about a different app and wonder if you should switch. You hear people praising a different system and doubt your own. This creates a cycle of constant tool switching that prevents you from ever fully committing to and mastering any single approach. The constant availability of information means you can research every decision endlessly. 20 years ago, you'd make a decision with the information you had and move on. Now, there's always more information available, always another review to read, always another perspective to consider. This leads to analysis paralysis. You're stuck researching and comparing rather than deciding and acting. The quest for the perfect choice prevents you from making any choice at all. And while you're stuck in research mode, time passes and opportunities disappear. Feature overwhelm is another issue. Modern software is incredibly feature-rich. Apps can do dozens or hundreds of things, but this complexity makes them harder to learn and use. You spend time trying to understand all the features rather than just using the basic functionality that would meet your needs. 20 years ago, software was simpler. It did fewer things, but what it did clearly. You could learn a program quickly and start using it productively. Now, you need to watch tutorials, read documentation, and spend hours learning before you can effectively use many apps. The comparison trap extends to productivity systems themselves. You see someone else's beautifully organized productivity system on social media and feel inadequate. Your own system seems messy in comparison. So you try to replicate their system, even though it doesn't fit your actual work or thinking style. This leads to constant system hopping. You try getting things done, then bullet journaling, then Zettelkasten, then building a second brain, and on and on. Each system requires time to set up and learn. You're constantly rebuilding your productivity infrastructure rather than actually using it to be productive. The perfect productivity system doesn't exist. What works is whatever system you'll actually use consistently. But the abundance of options and the marketing around productivity systems creates the illusion that there's a perfect system out there that will transform your productivity if you can just find it. Now, let's talk about how the algorithmic curation of content has made us passive consumers rather than active creators. 20 years ago, if you wanted entertainment or information, you had to actively seek it out. You chose what book to read, what movie to rent, what website to visit. You were an active agent in selecting what to consume. Now, algorithms curate content for you. Netflix suggests what to watch. YouTube suggests what to view next. Spotify suggests what to listen to. Social media feeds show you content selected by algorithms. You've become a passive recipient of curated content rather than an active seeker. This passivity extends beyond entertainment. Your news is algorithmically curated. The information you encounter is shaped by algorithms optimizing for engagement. The people you see updates from on social media are determined by algorithms. Your entire information diet is selected by systems you don't control and don't understand. This has made content consumption easier and more effortless. You don't have to think about what to watch or read next. The algorithm suggests something and you accept it. This feels convenient, but it's actually made us less intentional about how we spend our time. When consumption is effortless, you consume more. You scroll endlessly because the algorithm keeps feeding you content. You watch the next suggested video without thinking about whether you actually want to. You're on autopilot, and the algorithm is driving. This also shapes what you're exposed to. Algorithms optimize for engagement, not for quality or truth or what's best for you. They show you content that will keep you on the platform, which often means content that's provocative, emotional, or polarizing. Your worldview is being shaped by what keeps you clicking. The filter bubble effect means you see content similar to what you've engaged with before. This creates echo chambers where you're exposed primarily to perspectives you already agree with. This makes your thinking less nuanced, less challenged, more rigid. You're not being exposed to new ideas. You're having existing ideas reinforced. The passivity of consumption also means less creation. 20 years ago, people were more likely to create content, to have hobbies that involved making things, to actively engage with culture rather than just consuming it. Now, consumption is so easy and endless that creation feels harder by comparison. The bar for creation seems higher too. When you can see professional quality content for free anytime, your own amateur creations seem inadequate. Why write when you can read brilliant authors? Why make music when you can listen to perfect productions? Why create videos when you can watch Hollywood quality content? This comparison kills creativity before it starts. You don't create because you feel your creation won't measure up. But creation is valuable, independent of quality. The process of creating develops skills, expresses ideas, brings satisfaction that consumption never can. By consuming instead of creating, you're depriving yourself of these benefits. The dopamine economy of content consumption is designed to keep you consuming. Each new piece of content gives a small hit of dopamine. This is enough to keep you seeking the next hit, but not enough to truly satisfy. So you keep consuming, seeking satisfaction that never comes. Actual creative work provides deeper, more lasting satisfaction. Completing a project, making something, solving a problem, these provide fulfillment that consumption can't match. But they require effort and delayed gratification, while consumption is easy and immediately rewarding. The easy option crowds out the better option. The role of creator has also been commodified and professionalized in ways that discourage amateur creation. Being a YouTuber or podcaster or blogger is now seen as a professional pursuit requiring expensive equipment, sophisticated techniques, and business acumen. The idea of creating just for enjoyment or self-expression has been largely lost. This is a tragedy because amateur creation, making things for the joy of making them without concern for monetization or audience, is deeply fulfilling and was once a common human activity. Technology was supposed to make creation easier and more accessible. In some ways it has, but in other ways it's professionalized creation in ways that make it feel inaccessible to regular people. Now, let's explore how the breakdown of sustained attention has affected learning and skill development. Deep learning requires sustained attention. When you're learning something complex, you need to engage with it for extended periods, to think deeply about it, to struggle with difficult concepts, to practice repeatedly. This kind of learning is incompatible with fragmented attention. 20 years ago, learning often involved sustained engagement with books, courses, or mentors. You'd read a textbook chapter for an hour, work through problems, really grapple with the material. Or you'd take a class that met for hours at a time, forcing sustained focus on the subject. Now, learning is often fragmented. You watch a 10-minute YouTube video, read a blog post, listen to part of a podcast. Each piece gives you a little bit of information, but you never engage deeply enough for real understanding. You're collecting facts without developing deep knowledge. The illusion of learning is dangerous. You watch videos about a topic and feel like you understand it. But understanding a video about a concept is very different from being able to apply the concept yourself. Passive consumption creates the feeling of learning without the reality of it. Skill development requires practice, which requires sustained focus over time. You can't learn to code by watching YouTube tutorials for 10 minutes at a time. You need to actually write code for hours, struggle with bugs, build projects. This requires the ability to focus on a difficult task for extended periods despite frustration. But if you're used to constant stimulation and immediate gratification from your technology use, this kind of sustained effort feels unbearable. The moment you hit a difficulty, you want to switch to something easier, something that gives quicker rewards. So you never push through the struggle that leads to real skill development. The abundance of beginner content and scarcity of advanced content is another issue. Online, you can find thousands of Introduction to X tutorials, but very few resources for deep, advanced learning. This creates a situation where lots of people have surface-level knowledge of many things, but few people develop deep expertise in anything. The tutorial treadmill is a trap many people fall into. They consume tutorial after tutorial, always learning but never building. They learn the basics of a dozen programming languages but never write a real program. They learn productivity techniques but never apply them long enough to see results. This gives the feeling of progress without actual progress. You're doing something that feels productive, learning, but you're not actually developing capabilities or accomplishing goals. The learning becomes an end in itself rather than a means to an end. The format of online learning encourages this. Short videos, bite-sized lessons, gamified progress bars, these create a sense of advancement that's often illusory. You're advancing through a course, but are you actually learning? Can you apply the knowledge without reference to the course materials? Spaced repetition and deliberate practice, which are essential for real learning, are difficult when your attention is fragmented. These techniques require returning to material over time, practicing specific skills intentionally, and sustained focus. If you're constantly distracted, constantly switching between different things, you can't engage in the kind of practice that builds real competence. The decline in reading, particularly reading books, is both a cause and effect of fragmented attention. Reading a book requires sustained focus for hours at a time, chapter after chapter, day after day. This is increasingly difficult for people whose brains are accustomed to scrolling and short-form content. But reading is one of the best ways to develop sustained attention, to think deeply, to engage with complex ideas. The decline in reading means the decline in these capacities. You're less able to think deeply, to follow complex arguments, to hold multiple ideas in mind simultaneously. The replacement of reading with listening through audiobooks and podcasts changes the nature of engagement. Listening can be done while doing other things, which means it often is. You're listening while commuting, while exercising, while doing chores. This divided attention means less retention and understanding than you'd get from focused reading. This isn't to say audiobooks and podcasts have no value. They do, and they make certain content accessible in situations where reading isn't possible. But they're not a complete replacement for reading because the mode of engagement is fundamentally different. Now, let's talk about how the loss of boredom has killed creativity and problem solving. Boredom is uncomfortable, but it's also valuable. When you're bored, when your mind has nothing specific to focus on, that's when it makes unexpected connections, when creative ideas emerge, when solutions to problems you've been struggling with suddenly appear. 20 years ago, boredom was a regular part of life. Waiting in line, commuting, sitting in a waiting room, these were times when you had nothing to do but think. Your mind would wander, and in that wandering, creative and productive thoughts would emerge. Now, boredom is eliminated. The moment you have nothing specific to do, you pull out your phone. You scroll, you watch, you read, you play. You're constantly consuming input, constantly stimulating your brain, never letting it rest or wander. This has consequences for creativity. Creativity requires incubation time, periods when you're not actively working on a problem, but your subconscious is processing it. This happens during downtime, during boredom. By eliminating boredom, you're eliminating this essential incubation time. Many creative people throughout history have talked about their best ideas coming during walks, in the shower, while doing dishes, during other mindless activities. These are times when the conscious mind is occupied with something simple, leaving the subconscious free to work on problems and make connections. But if every moment is filled with phone use, if you're listening to podcasts while walking and scrolling while in the bathroom, your mind never has this processing time. Your creativity is being starved by constant input. Problem solving also benefits from periods of not actively working on the problem. When you step away from a difficult problem, often the solution comes to you later. Your brain continues working on it in the background. But this only happens if you give your brain idle time not filled with other content. The constant consumption of content also means you're always working with other people's ideas, rather than generating your own. You're reading others' thoughts, watching others' videos, listening to others' perspectives. This is valuable for learning, but it needs to be balanced with time for your own thinking. When all your time is filled with consumption, you never develop your own ideas. You know what others think, but haven't developed your own perspective. You can summarize arguments you've read, but haven't formulated your own arguments. You're intellectually dependent on others rather than intellectually autonomous. The discomfort of boredom is part of why people avoid it. Boredom feels bad. It's restless, it's uncomfortable, it makes you want to do something, anything. Reaching for your phone provides immediate relief from this discomfort. But in relieving the discomfort, you're also eliminating the benefits that come after pushing through it. The ability to sit with discomfort, to not immediately reach for stimulation. This is a muscle that atrophies without use. People who are used to constant stimulation find it increasingly difficult to tolerate any downtime. Even a few minutes without input feels unbearable. This inability to be alone with your thoughts is a loss of a fundamental human capacity. The examined life, knowing yourself, understanding your values and desires, this requires time spent in thought without external input. If you're never alone with your thoughts, you never develop this self-knowledge. Meditation and mindfulness practices are attempts to reclaim this capacity, to practice being present without constant stimulation. These practices are valuable and are growing in popularity partly because people recognize they've lost something essential. But it's ironic that we need to practice being bored when it used to be an unavoidable part of life. Now, let's explore how the optimization of everything has removed humanity from human activities. Technology promises to optimize everything: your sleep, your exercise, your work, your relationships. All of it can be tracked, analyzed, and optimized. This sounds positive: becoming more efficient, more effective, better at everything. But the optimization mindset has downsides. It treats every aspect of life as a problem to be solved, as something that should be made more efficient. This removes the human element, the messiness, the inefficiency that's actually part of what makes life meaningful. Exercise is a good example. 20 years ago, you might go for a run because it felt good, because you enjoyed being outside, because it cleared your head. The purpose was the experience itself. Now, exercise is tracked and optimized. You monitor heart rate zones, track pace and distance, analyze performance trends, compete on leaderboards. Exercise becomes about metrics rather than about how it feels. You're not running to enjoy running, you're running to hit your targets. This shifts motivation from intrinsic to extrinsic. You're exercising not because you want to, but because you want the metrics. And research shows that extrinsic motivation is less sustainable than intrinsic motivation. When the motivation is external, when it's about metrics rather than enjoyment, you're more likely to burn out and quit. The optimization of relationships is even more problematic. Dating apps reduce potential partners to profiles optimized for swipeable appeal. You're presented with people as products to select based on photos and brief bios. The human messiness of meeting someone in context, getting to know them gradually, is replaced with the optimized matching algorithm. This creates a paradox of choice in dating. You have access to hundreds or thousands of potential matches. This should be an advantage, but it often leads to endless searching for the perfect match, inability to commit because there's always potentially someone better just a swipe away, and shallow engagement with any individual person. The optimization mindset also affects relationships. Apps promise to help you be a better partner by tracking quality time, prompting you to send messages, reminding you of important dates. But relationships aren't tasks to be optimized. They're messy, human connections that can't be reduced to metrics and checklists. Work optimization through productivity apps and techniques has similar issues. Work becomes about metrics, tasks completed, time tracked, rather than about the actual value or meaning of the work. You're optimizing for output without considering whether the output matters. This can lead to working very efficiently on the wrong things. You're completing tasks quickly, hitting your targets, being measurably productive, but not actually accomplishing anything meaningful. The optimization is the goal rather than the means to a goal. The quantified self-movement takes optimization to an extreme. Every aspect of life is tracked and analyzed. Steps, sleep, calories, screen time, mood, energy levels, all of it measured and graphed. The idea is that tracking leads to improvement. But this constant self-monitoring can become oppressive. You're never just living. You're always evaluating yourself against metrics. Every deviation from targets creates anxiety. You can't just sleep, you must sleep the optimal amount. You can't just eat, you must hit your macros. Life becomes a constant performance review. This also assumes that everything worth doing is measurable, which is false. The most meaningful aspects of life, love, creativity, growth, relationships, these are difficult or impossible to quantify. By focusing on what can be measured, you neglect what can't be measured but might matter more. The optimization mindset also reduces tolerance for inefficiency and messiness. But inefficiency and messiness are often where the interesting stuff happens. Wandering down an interesting tangent, spending time on something unproductive but enjoyable. Having unstructured time, these can lead to insights and experiences that optimization would eliminate. The algorithmic optimization of your information diet, as discussed earlier, is another example. Algorithms optimize for engagement, showing you what will keep you clicking. This is efficient at capturing attention, but not at exposing you to diverse perspectives, challenging ideas, or information you need rather than information you want. Now, let's talk about the loss of offline time and spaces. 20 years ago, much of life happened offline. You went places without your phone. You had conversations without devices present. You spent time in spaces where technology wasn't central. Now, there are almost no offline spaces. Technology has colonized every domain of life. You carry your phone everywhere. Screens are in restaurants, gyms, waiting rooms, even elevators. You're never fully away from technology. This constant connection prevents genuine disconnection and rest. Even when you're not actively using technology, it's present, available, calling to you. The possibility of checking something, the awareness that you could be doing something more productive or interesting, this prevents full presence in the current moment. Social gatherings have changed. 20 years ago, when you met friends, you talked to each other. Now, phones often come out. Someone looks something up, someone checks a message, someone shows others something on their phone. The full attention that friends once gave each other is now divided. This phenomenon of being physically present but mentally elsewhere is uniquely modern. You're with people in body, but partially absent in mind, pulled toward the digital world, even while in the physical world. This creates a quality of interaction that's diminished, less connected, less meaningful than fully present interaction. Meals have been colonized by technology. People eat while scrolling, while watching videos, while catching up on messages. The simple pleasure of eating, of tasting food, of sharing a meal with others, this is lost when attention is on screens. Even activities specifically undertaken for relaxation often involve technology. You're relaxing by watching TV, by scrolling social media, by playing mobile games. These activities don't provide the same restoration as truly unplugged relaxation, like reading a book, taking a walk, or sitting quietly. Nature, which used to be a refuge from technology, is now documented and shared. People hike while listening to podcasts, photograph beautiful moments to post on social media, check their phones on the trail. The direct experience of nature is mediated through technology, even while physically in natural spaces. This documentation impulse, the need to capture and share experiences, actually diminishes the experiences themselves. When you're thinking about how to photograph something or what caption to write, you're not fully experiencing it. The experience becomes material for content, rather than something valued in itself. The loss of offline time also means loss of privacy and solitude. You're never truly alone, because you're always connected. This constant connectivity to others, even when you're physically alone, prevents the deep solitude that's necessary for self-reflection and personal growth. Sacred spaces that were once technology-free are now invaded. Some people check phones during religious services. Students use laptops in classes for non-class activities. Even therapist offices and medical exam rooms aren't fully free from phones. The idea of dedicated, single-purpose spaces has eroded. The night, which used to be a natural boundary on activity, has been extended. 20 years ago, when it got dark, activity wound down. Now, screens provide light and stimulation at all hours. People stay up much later, continuing to work or consume content into the night, disrupting natural sleep rhythms. Sleep itself has been invaded by technology. Phones in bedrooms, screens before sleep, sleep tracking apps, smart alarms, all of this makes sleep more technological and less restful. The bedroom, which should be a sanctuary for rest, has become just another place where technology is present. Now, let's explore how the expectation of instant gratification has damaged our ability to pursue long-term goals. Technology has trained us to expect instant results. Want information? Google it instantly. Want entertainment? Stream it immediately. Want food? Order it on an app and it arrives in minutes. Almost everything can be had quickly and easily. This instant gratification is psychologically rewarding, but has downsides. It trains your brain to expect immediate rewards. And when immediate rewards are expected, activities that provide delayed gratification become harder to engage with. Learning a new skill takes months or years. Building a career takes decades. Writing a book takes months of sustained effort. Creating a meaningful relationship takes time and patience. These long-term pursuits don't provide immediate rewards. They require sustained effort with delayed gratification. But if your brain is accustomed to instant gratification, the delayed rewards of long-term pursuits feel unsatisfying. You start a project but lose motivation when you don't see immediate results. You give up on goals because the path to achievement is long and you've been conditioned to expect quick results. The ability to delay gratification is a crucial life skill. Research has shown it predicts success in various domains more than many other factors. But this skill is being eroded by technology that provides constant, instant gratification. Children and young people who've grown up with technology are particularly affected. They've never known a world without instant access to information, entertainment, and social connection. Their baseline expectation is instant gratification, and they struggle more than previous generations with pursuits requiring patience and persistence. The dopamine cycle of technology use reinforces instant gratification. Every notification, every new post, every message provides a small dopamine hit. These hits come frequently and unpredictably, which is maximally addictive. Your brain becomes oriented toward seeking these frequent small rewards rather than working toward large delayed rewards. This affects how you approach work. Instead of spending hours on a difficult project with uncertain outcomes, you're drawn to tasks that provide quick, certain rewards. Responding to emails, completing small tasks, these give immediate satisfaction. So you spend your time on these rather than on deeper work that would be more valuable, but provides delayed gratification. The epidemic of unfinished projects is partly related to instant gratification. You start something enthusiastically, but when the initial excitement wears off and you're in the messy middle where progress is slow and rewards are distant, you lose motivation. You move on to a new project that provides the excitement of starting something new. This leaves you with many started but unfinished projects. You're always beginning but never completing, always excited about potential, but never experiencing the satisfaction of achievement. The completed projects, the finished work, this is where real growth and accomplishment come from, but you never get there. The cultural emphasis on hacking and shortcuts reinforces this. There's constant messaging about life hacks, growth hacks, shortcuts to success. The implication is that there's a fast, easy way to achieve any goal if you can just find the right trick. But most worthwhile achievements don't have shortcuts. They require sustained effort over time. The search for shortcuts keeps you from committing to the actual path, which is long and difficult, but leads somewhere real. The comparison between your beginning and someone else's middle or end is another demotivating factor. You see others' polished results without seeing the years of work that produce them. This makes your own early efforts seem inadequate. Why bother trying if you can't immediately produce results as good as what you see others producing? This is a misunderstanding of how skill development works. Everyone starts as a beginner. Everyone's early work is rough, but social media and curated online presence means you usually don't see people's beginning stages. You see their highlight reel and compare it to your behind the scenes, which is demoralizing and demotivating. Now, as we move toward the end of our journey tonight, let's talk about recovering productivity in a technological world. The first recognition is that technology itself isn't the enemy. Technology is a tool, and like any tool, it can be used well or poorly. The problem isn't that technology exists. The problem is how we're using it and the ways it's designed to use us. Intentionality is the key. Instead of using technology reactively, responding to every notification and impulse, you can use it intentionally. You decide when and how to use technology based on your goals and values, rather than letting technology decide for you. This requires conscious effort. The default, the path of least resistance, is reactive use. Notifications appear and you respond. Apps suggest content and you consume. The system is designed to keep you reactive. Being intentional means constantly choosing a harder path, resisting the pull of easy stimulation. Digital minimalism is one approach. This means being selective about technology use, choosing only the tools and platforms that provide clear value and align with your goals. Everything else is eliminated or severely limited. The idea is to keep the benefits of technology while eliminating the costs of distraction and fragmentation. This isn't about going completely offline or rejecting technology entirely. It's about being conscious and selective, using technology as a tool to support your goals rather than letting technology use you as a tool to support its goals. Creating offline time deliberately is essential. Schedule periods of your day or week when you're completely disconnected from technology. No phone, no computer, no screens. Use this time for activities that require full presence: reading, conversation, walking, thinking, creating. This is difficult at first if you're addicted to stimulation. The discomfort will be real. But pushing through this discomfort rebuilds your capacity for sustained attention, for boredom, for being present. The discomfort lessens with practice. Batching technology use instead of allowing constant access can help. Designate specific times to check email, to browse social media, to process messages. Outside those times, the technology is off, and you're fully focused on other things. This maintains the benefits of technology while eliminating constant interruption. This requires discipline and often requires communicating your boundaries to others. If people expect immediate responses, you need to reset those expectations. You need to communicate that you check messages at certain times and will respond then. Most things that seem urgent really aren't. Deleting apps from your phone, especially social media and news apps, can dramatically reduce phone use. If you want to check social media, you have to do it on a computer, which creates more friction and makes it less likely you'll do it impulsively. This friction is helpful rather than harmful. Turning off most or all notifications is crucial. The only notifications most people actually need are phone calls and perhaps messages from a very small number of people who might have genuine emergencies. Everything else can wait. You can check for messages and updates on your schedule, not on the app's schedule. Using focused work sessions with physical timers can help rebuild sustained attention. Set a timer for 25 or 50 minutes, work on a single task without any technology distraction, then take a break. This Pomodoro-style approach trains your brain to focus for extended periods. This is hard at first if your attention is fragmented. You'll want to check your phone, to look something up, to respond to a thought. But sitting with that discomfort and continuing to focus strengthens your attention muscles. Like any skill, it improves with practice. Reading books, preferably physical books, regularly is one of the best ways to rebuild sustained attention. Books require focus for hours at a time, which is exactly the skill that's been eroded by technology. Making reading a daily practice, even for 30 minutes, maintains and improves this capacity. The content of what you read matters less than the practice of sustained attention. Fiction, non-fiction, whatever interests you. The key is engaging with long-form content that requires sustained focus. Embracing boredom and downtime deliberately can restore creativity and problem-solving capacity. Take walks without podcasts. Sit quietly without your phone. Let your mind wander without filling the space with content. This feels uncomfortable at first, but becomes valuable and even enjoyable. The initial discomfort is your brain adjusting to not having constant stimulation. It's like withdrawal from addiction. But once you're through it, you discover that boredom isn't actually that bad. And in that boredom, creative thoughts emerge. Problems solve themselves. You access a part of your mind that constant stimulation had blocked. Creating before consuming each day can shift your identity from consumer to creator. Before you check any media, before you consume any content, spend time creating something. Write, draw, code, make music, whatever creation means for you. Even 30 minutes daily accumulates into significant creative output. This also primes your brain differently for the day. You start as a creator rather than as a consumer. This changes how you relate to content you encounter later. You're more critical, more selective, less passive. Single-tasking ruthlessly is perhaps the most important change. Commit to doing one thing at a time with full attention. When working, close everything except what you're working on. When with people, put your phone away. When eating, just eat. Be fully present for each activity. This feels inefficient at first because we've been trained to believe multitasking is more productive, but single-tasking is actually more efficient. Tasks are completed faster and to higher quality when you give them full attention. And the experience of each activity is richer when you're fully present. Redefining productivity for yourself is important. Instead of accepting the technology industry's definition, which centers around responsiveness and activity, define productivity as making meaningful progress on things that matter to you. This might mean fewer tasks completed, but more important work accomplished. This requires knowing what actually matters to you, which requires the self-reflection that only comes from having time away from constant input. What are your real goals? What do you want to accomplish? What kind of life do you want to live? These questions can't be answered while scrolling. Building friction into the use of distracting technology helps. Put your phone in another room while working. Log out of social media sites so you have to consciously log in to use them. Delete and reinstall apps that you want to use occasionally but not constantly. Make the distracting behavior harder and the focused behavior easier. Environment design matters. Create spaces conducive to focus. A desk with only work materials, not devices or clutter. Reading spaces without screens. Bedrooms without phones. Physical space that supports the behaviors you want to cultivate. Social support can help too. Find others who are trying to use technology more intentionally. Share strategies. Support each other's boundaries. Create accountability. This is harder than it should be because most of society is still in the grip of unexamined technology use. But finding even a few allies makes the path easier. Teaching these practices to children is crucial if you have them. Model healthy technology use. Create tech-free times and spaces in your home. Help children develop the capacity for sustained attention, for boredom, for offline play and creation. These are gifts that will serve them throughout their lives. This isn't about being anti-technology. It's about being pro-human. Technology should serve human flourishing, not the other way around. When technology is making you less productive, less focused, less creative, less connected to real people and experiences, something has gone wrong. You have the power to change this, not by rejecting technology entirely, which isn't realistic or necessary, but by becoming conscious of how you use it and making different choices. Every moment, you can choose to engage with technology intentionally or to step away from it entirely. Now, as we come to the end of our journey tonight, I want to leave you with some final reflections. Technology has made us less productive than we were 20 years ago. Not because technology is inherently bad, but because we've allowed it to colonize every moment of our lives, fragment our attention, and replace meaningful activity with passive consumption. But this isn't inevitable. It's the result of choices, both individual choices about how we use technology and systemic choices about how technology is designed and deployed. Different choices can lead to different outcomes. The people who designed these technologies understood human psychology and exploited it to create addictive, attention-capturing systems. You're not weak for being affected by them. You're human, and these systems were designed by experts to manipulate your humanity. But understanding how you're being manipulated is the first step toward freedom from that manipulation. Once you see how notifications are designed to be addictive, how algorithms curate your attention, how apps gamify your behavior, you can make more conscious choices about whether to participate. The promise of technology was that it would free us, that it would give us more time, more capacity, more connection, and in some ways it has delivered on those promises. But in many ways, it's done the opposite. It's taken our time, fragmented our capacity, and replaced genuine connection with shallow digital interactions. The question isn't whether to use technology. The question is how to use it in ways that serve your actual goals and values rather than the goals of the platforms and their business models. This requires ongoing vigilance. The technology environment is designed to pull you back toward reactive, fragmented use. Every update, Every new feature, every new platform is optimized for engagement, not for your well-being or productivity. But you can resist. You can make different choices. You can reclaim your attention, your time, your capacity for deep work and creative thought. It's not easy, but it's possible, and it's worth it. 20 years ago, people were productive with simpler technology because they had sustained attention, clear boundaries, and time for deep work. You can have those things again, not by going backward in time, but by moving forward with intentionality. The tools are just tools. They don't control you unless you let them. You can pick them up when they serve you and put them down when they don't. You can create spaces and times in your life where technology has no place. You can rebuild the capacities that constant technology use has eroded. Your attention is yours. Your time is yours. Your mind is yours. These are precious resources, far more valuable than any technology. Protect them. Use them intentionally. Don't let them be sold to the highest bidder or given away freely to any app that asks. The most productive thing you might do tomorrow isn't downloading a new productivity app or learning a new technique. It might be turning off your phone for a few hours and doing deep work on something that actually matters. The most creative thing you might do this week isn't consuming more content about creativity. It might be sitting in boredom long enough for your own ideas to emerge. The most connected you might feel isn't through another video call or messaging thread. It might be through an in-person conversation where both people are fully present, devices put away, attention undivided. These simple things, focus, presence, attention, they've become revolutionary acts in a world designed to fragment and distract. But they're also deeply human acts, ways of being that humans have practiced for thousands of years and only recently lost. You can reclaim them. You can be productive again, not by working faster or using more tools, but by working with focus on things that matter. You can create again, not by consuming tutorials about creating, but by turning off the inputs and letting your own thoughts emerge. You can rest again, truly rest, not by scrolling through endless content, but by giving your mind permission to simply be, without stimulation, without input, without constant doing. Technology promised to make everything easier, and in some ways it has. But it also made meaningful work harder by destroying the conditions necessary for it. Sustained attention, deep focus, patience with difficulty, tolerance for boredom. These conditions can be recreated. Not easily, not without effort, but they can be rebuilt. And when they are, you'll discover that you're capable of more than you realized, that you can focus for longer than you thought, that you have creative ideas when you give them space to emerge, that you can accomplish meaningful things when you protect your attention from constant fragmentation. This is the path back to genuine productivity, not through more technology, more apps, more optimization, but through less, through simplification, through reclaiming the mental space that technology has colonized. So, as you drift toward sleep tonight, I invite you to imagine a different relationship with technology. Imagine days where you work with sustained focus. Imagine evenings where you're fully present with the people you love. Imagine the satisfaction of completing meaningful projects rather than the empty feeling of scrolled hours. This isn't nostalgia for the past. It's a vision of a future where you use technology intentionally, where you're in control rather than being controlled. This future is available to you, starting tomorrow, starting with small choices that accumulate into different patterns, different habits, different outcomes. You are more capable than you've been allowing yourself to be. You have more attention than you've been using. You have more time than you've been experiencing. These resources have been there all along, just hidden beneath layers of distraction and fragmentation. Reclaim them, one choice at a time, one day at a time, one moment of intentional focus at a time. Let your breathing slow now. Let your body relax completely. Let these thoughts settle into your mind, ready to inform your choices when you wake. You have the power to be productive again, to create again, to think deeply again, not despite technology, but by using it wisely and knowing when to set it aside. Sleep well, friends. Tomorrow is a new day, full of possibilities, full of choices, full of moments where you can decide to be present, to focus, to create, to live intentionally. Good night.